can tell that you're a really engaged crowd here, and I'm super happy about that. Now I'd like to introduce Ruchika Jalani on my team. She's the director of the eBay Developers Program, and she's going to lead a panel on lessons learned from early adopters. Thank you.
I got the eye of the tiger, fire, dancing through the fire. 'Cause I am a champion, and you're gonna hear me roar louder, louder than a lion. 'Cause
Hi, everybody. So my name is Ruchika Jalani, and I lead the eBay Developers Program. But I'm not going to spend too much time talking about me, because you're going to hear from me on Thursday, because when I'm going to be talking about the Buy APIs. But I want to welcome our customers and our esteemed panelist members. So please come on, you guys. So that's Brett.
Hey.
From Channel Advisor, Nicholas from Aeropost, Brad from InkFrog, and Kyle Schumacher from WikiBy. And I'm going to go all the way to that side. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just take a minute to just sort of go around. I might have to do this a lot, Brett. But why don't you guys just take a second to introduce yourself.
Okay.
Tell us about who you are, where you work, which I've kind of told, but and in what capacity are you, or what's your business? You know, what does Channel Advisor do? What does InkFrog do, or WikiBy or Aeropost? So why don't you go?
Okay, great. My name is Brett Behrens, and I work for Channel Advisor, and we are based in Morrisville, North Carolina. So you probably don't know where that is, but it's Raleigh. And we have a platform that allows major retailers to kind of manage their inventories throughout the entire e-commerce world, from selling, orders, pretty much anything, advertising. We're kind of like a one-stop shop for major retailers.
Okay. Great. Nicholas?
My name is Nicholas Maslowski. I'm Revenue and Marketing Officer for Aeropost. I'm located in Miami, but we have also offices in Costa Rica for the development. We basically do cross-border e-commerce for Latin America, so Central America, Caribbean, and the west of South America. And what we enable is basically cross-border e-commerce, allowing customers to buy in US sites and then get it delivered at home or at some of our 100 locations for pickup.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brad?
My name is Brad Osman. I'm with InkFrog today, and our organization is a provider of third-party tools that help the seller experience through listing, other types of integrations such as sales channel integrations.
Kyle?
Kyle Schumacher. I'm with a startup based out of Austin, Texas called WikiBy. WikiBy provides personal deal discovery. We have a mobile app, Chrome extension, and website, and we're excited to be here today.
Okay. So, Nicholas, why don't I start with you? I work with the Buy API team. My team is the one that developed Buy APIs. I'm very familiar with your flow. But tell us, or just take us through the journey of how you came about thinking about the Buy API integration. What prompted you to approach eBay? What prompted you to sort of think about that Buy API would be a legit use case for you? And we've obviously seen good traction in the last few months that we've integrated with you guys, or you've integrated with us, how you look at it. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, great. I think the first piece is understanding the business and for you folks in the US, also seeing the difference of a transaction happening outside. It's sort of like domestic flights versus international flights. There's a lot more stages in the process. But basically, retailers outside of the US are incentivized to buy very few items in large quantities. That increases margin, reduces risk. That generates very little assortment in countries outside of the US. And our business basically is bridging that gap and allowing customers in those countries to access the assortment of the US. Now, we've been engaged, working together with the business development team, with Alejandro, for a couple of years now, and we started basically, I think, doing what everybody was trying, which was getting customers to register on eBay and then register on our site and then registering with a bank in order to do a cross-border transaction. So it's absolutely not a seamless process. Still, it's great business. But as we started working together, we realized that if we can merge that experience and create a seamless transition from shopping to paying and to delivering, then we would get our results up. So that's where the buyer API came in. After testing a lot of different KPIs, we started working out as an alliance and figuring out, well, how can we increase GMV instead of simply registrations or activations or all the previous ones. And that's where the API came in, and now customers are able to shop on eBay, and I think that's the best experience there. But then they're able to pay on our site, to the question that was being addressed before. They can pay on our site where we have local payment solutions. We've already dealt with banks, we have installments and different payments, and then we handle the last mile.
Right.
So the results have been great.
Yeah. So Nicholas and I were talking when I think Stephen, it was you who had asked the question, I don't remember your name, about why do you see a higher purchase price, average purchase price on off-platform commerce versus on eBay? And I think, Nicholas, you had a very good response. Why don't you just share that with the group?
And we've seen it across every retailer. The average order value through us is significantly higher, and what we see is basically you have to trust the delivery at the end. So what we're seeing is that if customers buy direct on any of the retailers, there's different ways that package is going to arrive. They're actually concerned about the arrival, the last mile, the customs, and so on. Now that they've tried the experience with us, you see our AOV going significantly higher, and it's significantly higher, actually.
So it comes down to trust. People are trusting their local merchant they've dealt with in past. They've bought something small. They know that the purchase went through, the order came through, it was in the time, and then they're willing and able to spend a lot more in the context of the local experience. Brett, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your integration and how did it come about, when, and just take us through that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Not me personally, but ChannelAdvisor, we've been integrating with eBay since the beginning, since before we were scraping pages. And
how long ago back was that?
Oh, it was a long time ago. I had to ask my boss. I was like, when did you start? And it was a long time ago. But we have gone through pretty much every aspect of the eBay API, and all the way from the trading API and then now the RESTful stuff. And it's been great, and we're kind of excited to move towards more of the newer stuff. Of course, we have so much existing stuff right now with the old API. It's kind of hard to try to find that point where you can kind of start moving things over. And we do a lot of API calls. A lot.
That's good. We love the API calls.
A lot.
Kyle, how about you? Your integration and your journey with eBay?
Sure. Well, WikiBy is a startup, so we're still quite young, but I feel like we have been through the full life cycle. We started with the finding API, and when we heard about the buy APIs in the pipeline, we were eager to give them a try. And for those who haven't used WikiBy, it really is a magical experience when you use the buy API. So you can be shopping as you usually would online, and we present a savings to you, and you're able to check out with just 2 clicks. And so the user is able to get their savings right there without ever leaving the WikiBy experience, whether that be on the mobile app or website. And we were excited to get started, and it's definitely, our users have definitely taken a liking to it.
I personally love the WikiBy experience. I was, I think a few months ago, at an internal town hall where we talk about the experience, our new technology or feature set that we're building out, and I was demoing it internally, and I love when I steal the business right from under Amazon's nose. And that's exactly what WikiBy let us do. So it's a Chrome plugin, and I was looking for a Nest thermostat or something, and it came out cheaper on eBay, and then we just transacted.
I see a lot of people downloading WikiBy right now, so I'm quite excited about that. We just believe that no one should ever pay more than what they have to when shopping online.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you also said you heard about Buy APIs. How did you hear about Buy APIs?
That's correct. They were just starting to come out of, actually, I believe they were still in beta. So we were talking to our EPN rep, and we had these grand aspirations, and she had mentioned to us that there were some buy APIs in the pipeline, and so she was kind enough to introduce us to your team, and we were excited to be one of the first.
Yeah, we love it. We love your integration.
Excellent.
Brad, tell us a little bit about your integration with eBay.
Sure. InkFrog started in the late 90s, and I'm sure similar to a lot of you that are out here, we started as a screen scraping organization. And one of our first offerings was to offer listings, to offer image hosting, to offer templating services for the sellers, so that we were basically enhancing the eBay seller experience. So we've been using the trading APIs for quite some time. Over the last couple of years, we've started to direct some of our attention to more of an integration environment where we're trying to take third-party channels, bring them sales channels, and bring them into the ecosystem, into the eBay ecosystem. So the traditional APIs, the trading APIs, we were quite familiar with those, but when we heard about the RESTful APIs being more native to the HTTP environment, more native to the internet in general, we really wanted to head in that direction, so we started really trying to adopt where that direction was going and embrace it, so that with this way the landscape shifts in our industry, you really need to stay abreast of that, or you fall over. So that's probably was our biggest motivator, was how do we use eBay's latest offerings to remain competitive and give our sellers what they expect.
Okay. Nicholas, tell us how long the integration with the new, you kind of had the combination of the old and the new in your integration, but how long did it take, and what sort of a process was that? And just because you're here, you don't have to tell us just the good things. Just tell us like how really it was. Just give it to us. Like.
No, I think honestly, once we figured out that we didn't have to divide the turf on, where does the customer end the transaction, I think that was what took a while. But we started the integration, and it took us around 3 months. We actually did a really hard, what we thought was a hard test on the API in February, March, with a free shipping promotion that actually tested the API, and it worked well. It worked really well. Honestly, it's been short. I think we're learning a lot. There's a lot of components that need to be adjusted in order to give, precise pricing and so on in terms of weight, or where the package is coming from, so that we can estimate times better. But the integration has been fairly fast, successful.
Yeah, and I really want to add something there, because, guys like Aeropost and WikiBy, when they've come along the journey with us, like Gail was talking about last week at the EPN Summit, they've helped us drink our own champagne. She said that sounds much classier than eat our own dog food, and I'm totally plagiarizing what she said there. But it's really helped us, because we knew what we knew, right? We didn't know what sort of use cases are we solving for. We sort of had an idea, but when you guys sort of came along the journey with us, said this is not working right, we need this support or that support, this is missing, that's what helped us evolve our APIs. And so, it's really, we're building it with you. We're not, we're building them for you, but we're building them with you along. I feel that too, and we love how you guys are just so open and happy to share your feedback, candid feedback to us, and that helps us, make our APIs that much better. Kyle, what was your experience like? You tell us.
Once we got the thumbs up with specifically the checkout API, which was the first buying API that we integrated, we had one developer working on the project, and we were live and prod in less than a week. And as I followed up with one of my developers, he put it best. He said it's just a few calls. And so, of course, as a startup, we definitely probably found hiccups after we got integrated, but we were able to get live quite quickly.
So we recorded a video last year when Gail announced the APIs at the Grace Hopper conference, and Kyle's line is what I quote him often. Like, it was, by API integration was so easy, it was just a few lines of code. And I love that. It's just it's so nice to have a customer provide that sort of a testimonial to the integration. So that was awesome. Brad, do you want to share like an anecdote or a story or something?
I actually have a pretty funny one.
You already
I have a pretty funny one.
Okay.
And, I have two, and they probably will segue one into another. As I mentioned, we started out scraping screens. And then through the years, we've continued to use the trading API. Once we evolved outside of screen scraping, we used the trading API. So when the RESTful API was released, one of the things that we wanted to do was immediately jump in and adopt it. So being a C# developer, .NET developer, the majority of our platform is developed on that environment. So the first thing we wanted to do was go out there and try to find a client, find an SDK, find something that somebody had already written to consume that API so we didn't have to write it. And unfortunately, we couldn't find that. So being familiar with the Open API, being familiar with the Swagger format, one of our first forays into it was how do we redefine that interface, the eBay interface, using the Swagger interface, consume this so that we could output our clients so we wouldn't have to do all that hard work. We approached it from a couple different angles, and we decided that that was too laborious for us at the point. We weren't sure where the API was going to end up. We didn't want to make a lot of mistakes. And because we were doing it in concurrency with the redevelopment of our entire infrastructure, we just didn't want to invest a lot of time into that. So we continued to hope for tools, hope for tools, hope for tools. So we kicked the can down the road for quite a ways. About 2 weeks ago, we finally decided we were at the point where the rubber meets the road, and we had to develop that client. So we started, first thing we did is we went in and we started reading the documentation and developing the models. Very time consuming. So after about 2 days of doing that, one of the developers went into the documentation and said, hey, you know, this is all here. Maybe we can screen scrape it and write a client. So they did. In the time that it took us to develop probably 1 or 2 endpoints for what we were attempting to do, they went in, developed a client in the course of 48 hours, pointed it at the eBay documentation, and had our client written within 6 minutes. And then I come here today and I find out that all of our hard work was for naught because we now have the ability to consume the Swagger format and output using the Swagger utility, the client. So it's pretty exciting nonetheless, but our biggest pain point was really trying to understand that documentation and not make mistakes. We didn't want to paint ourselves in a corner. We wanted to remain flexible and ensure that we always had some room to move back and forth in case things changed, but great news that I heard today, so it's pretty exciting. That's
What
my
is that
story.
song here? Every breath you take, every step or every move you make, I'll be watching you. It reminds me of that. Like, we already knew you guys are doing that. And
Yes.
we have it solved now.
Pretty exciting.
It's really nice. So, Brett, why don't you tell us about, actually, why don't you tell us something similar? Like, do you have a story or a...
Well, I guess I can just talk about our start with the RESTful APIs. Okay. And it's funny because it seems like the crowd is right on some of the pain points that kind of we went through. And, you know, we're an existing big system. We have a ton of users. And now all of a sudden we want to add promoted listings. And that was what I started with. And it was like, oh, great. This great thing that we want to get people to use because it helps them sell more of their products. And you kind of get to this point where it's like, oh, well, now it's a new token. It's a new scope. We got to get all these people to kind of go through the re-tokenization process again and on a different side. And you know that one of the things we've talked about is it's really easy to add a new call. It's really easy to support a new API. The only thing that was really a pain point was getting the users to actually go through that token process to generate the tokens. And then what was kind of unfortunate was we started that promoted listing stuff so early to where I did not have a list of all the scopes. So I made a system to do all the token stuff with only one scope. And then it came out later, oh, here's this list of scopes. And I was like, oh. So now we got to ask everybody to do it again. And it's just, that was definitely a lesson learned right there is ask for all the scopes that are there. Do not, don't shortchange yourself because you might end up having to go through the exact same process again. Yeah, so.
Okay, good. Kyle, what do you think, or what are your impressions about your engagement with eBay? Like, if you were not here, if you were talking to a third person, and how would you describe us? How would you tell how easy or difficult it was? What were some of the key things that jumped at you? What are some of the gotchas that other people should watch out for? What would you say?
I mean, to brag on your team, Ruchika and Gail and everyone else involved, my job is to be responsive as doing partner development, and your team was often more responsive than I am. It was incredible.
Thank you.
And so as our developer would have questions, I would often pass them along and get a response before I was done sending my next email. And so the kind of the tips I would have and what I would encourage everyone is treat eBay very much as a partner. It's not a sort of client relationship. It's very much a partner relationship. Make sure there's an open line of communication. your team worked around the clock to make sure that we had a seamless launch, and it was seamless. And anytime we think we found a bug, we oftentimes reach out, and many times the bug's on our end. So we appreciate the open line, but my feedback would be for everyone else in this room to very much treat eBay as an equal partner. We were both trying to build what will hopefully become the forefront of e-commerce.
This really warms my heart because this is core to our values and how we operate as a team, that when a customer reports something or they're talking about a pain point, and there are several people in the room, who we actually take it to heart, and we make it a point to reach out to you. Even if we don't have a solve, we say we're working on it, or we don't know, or we don't have this particular feature set available as yet, but let's think about how we can add it to the roadmap. So it's very nice to hear that sort of close the loop, and you actually feel that we are being that responsive to you when you have questions or concerns or pain points or bugs or whatever have you, So that's...
It's very noticeable. I mean, I think some of the early feedback we even gave is now built into the APIs, and that's exciting to see.
Okay. Brad, how would you describe the relationship with eBay?
I think it's phenomenal. We've always had a very tight feedback loop with eBay. Any questions or concerns we might have, we get them immediately answered. So I can't say that we've ever had a problem with that at all, and it's certainly helped us move forward, particularly with the pain points that we've had in trying to adopt this RESTful API.
Okay, that's great. Nicholas?
I'll probably continue with positive feedback. I guess the only additional comment I could add is the faster you get on an open book relationship, the better. I think at the beginning we were a little bit, figuring ourselves out, but now that we're sort of on the same metrics and on open book, it's been exactly phenomenal, very fast.
Well, that's good to hear. Brad?
Well, if most of you probably don't know the history of ChannelVisor, but there would not be a ChannelVisor if there wasn't an eBay. And we've kind of, from the beginning, have kind of gone hand in hand, and it's been a great relationship, and it continues to be a great relationship. And yeah, definitely talk about being that partner and realizing that you're trying to do the same thing, and just all the good stuff, especially with the new APIs, just the functionality, like the promoted listings, the item promotions. These are things that are going to help sellers, and these are good things to present to use. So yeah, it's been great.
Okay, I'm gonna really push you guys. I know you are sitting here at eBay Campus or answering questions that I'm asking, but we all have areas of improvement, personally, professionally, features, product, tools, software, whatever have you. What are some of the things that you feel, like from your lens, when you look at the ones that are integrated with Buy API, when you're looking at the Buy API or the Sell API offering? What are some of the things that jump at you that you think, if only eBay could do this, it would be so much better? What would that one thing be? Nicholas, I'll start with you.
I guess to focus or prioritize sometimes the other way around. So I guess there's been so much evolution on the shopping experience that we get excited about all the fancy stuff on the top of the funnel. And there's some gaps that need to be solved on the bottom side, on the conversion side. Once we try to distinguish between shoppers and buyers by thinking of buyer, the person that already found what they're looking for, they just need to get it paid and delivered. If we make sure and we do checks that all the boxes that the buyer requires in order to finish their transaction are complete, then we can move upwards and get more fancy in terms of personalization and recommendations and so on. But let's finish the bottom of the funnel first.
Okay, that's good. Brett, what would you have to say?
A really good sandbox is a start. I mean, especially with
Okay.
as a developer, it's just crucial, and we want to do these new APIs, and we want to support all these new features, and then you're so excited, you get it done, and you're like, code to it, and then you go try it in the sandbox, and nothing works, and you're like, oh yeah, how am I going to test this now? And that's definitely always been a pain point for us, and it's definitely a pain point for our QAs who have all their automated testing that fails every night because it doesn't work. And as that especially with the new APIs as that goes forward, it just would be really great, if we had that stable sandbox to work in that would allow us to get things done quicker. We could test quickly, we could, validate our work quickly, and that's kind of, as a developer, I mean, my boss would probably say something else, but as a developer, that's big.
Yeah, it was my first. I think it was like literally the first week I had taken this role, leading the eBay developer program, and we went to Open in Vegas, and so many developers came to us and said that we're so glad that at least you have a sandbox.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So,
Yeah,
so but to your point,
don't.
there are things that are missing, and we are very cognizant and aware of it, and we have room to improve there. We understand that, but it was just so nice to hear that people, because we always hear about like what's missing from Sandbox, how it doesn't have the right data, how it's down, or some things are missing, or the right services are not deployed. There are features that is incomplete. So, but it was nice that people are actually comparing us with some of the competitors who don't even offer a play environment for developers to go check out their code or test out their code rather. Brad, what would you?
I would have to agree with the comment about the sandbox. To take
These are the two developers in the,
yeah, so
on the
I'm
panel.
speaking strictly from a developer's standpoint. So, and that's going to be my strong point in these conversations. I'm in the documentation, and I heard more great news today. The documentation's been rewritten. For me, it was a pain point. It was I don't want to say that our application's unique, but we do consume both the trading API and the new RESTful APIs. And there is the issue of tokenization, particularly the new OAuth 2 flow. So one of the challenges that we had is because we need to support both environments, we needed to come up with a way, and I have to add that we're also using the eBay SDK, which is a .NET environment, and it's pretty sealed, it's locked down. Fortunately, the source code was out there, so commendations. I was able to take the source code, hack through it a little bit, and coerce it into accepting the OAuth 2 token that we were retrieving through the OAuth flow for the RESTful API. So using that strategy, we were able to do both. But fortunately, the source code was there, which I think was great. That really helped me out as a developer. The documentation, I have bookmarks upon bookmarks upon bookmarks because there wasn't the cohesion that I would have hoped for if I were trying to get through. I wanted to just quickly find a link that says, oh, and you should probably know this. As an example, the commerce API was the taxonomy API was sort of a byline. It was, you have your buy and your sell, and oh, by the way, there's this little down here. And for me, that was difficult to find. I eventually found it, but I found it by hacking the URL and saying, what if I put in taxonomy up here? So that's how I found it. But I hear today that the improvements have been made, and that when I go home, flip that on, it's going to be a whole new developer console. So I'm pretty excited to hear that.
Okay, good. Kyle,
Speaking on behalf of our developers, and I suspect this is true being an early adopter of an API that's not being used by a lot of people, but better error messaging. We were oftentimes kind of banging our heads to understand what the general error was. And we've definitely seen improvements, but it would probably save a few emails through DTS if we had a little more complete error messaging.
Okay. Let me just sort of shift gears and ask you something. If you were to forget about APIs for a second, Kyle, from your perspective, and are you a shopper on eBay?
I am. I actually I created my account over 17 years ago. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2000.
What's your feedback score?
I think 100%. So I've been shopping on eBay for a while.
So what are some of the things, or one thing, or few things that you really, really like on site that you wish that would port over to the APIs? Like we would start offering that on the APIs. Like Gail talked a lot about our, launched our marketing APIs and, our multi sort of year, or if not, probably multi-year, at least a year roadmap where we're going to be rolling out new functionality and new features. But what are some of the things that you look at, because we are moving this gigantic ship of eBay from this web-centric or mobile-centric to an API, first mentality company. What are some of the things that you think, as a buyer, you would you would recommend we should strongly think about?
Wow,
API offering?
I think Gail may have taken a win out of my sails there. The first thing, when I'm shopping on eBay, I'm very specific about what I'm searching for, right? As I become less price sensitive, it's often new, right? And I want to make sure that an unopened box is actually an unopened box. And so there's obviously a lot more search functionality on the consumer interface than there is via the APIs, but it looks like that has changed as of an hour ago. So definitely exciting there. And what I would like to see more of that I don't think actually exists in the consumer interface nor the API interfaces is this product actually a product, right? So if I'm going to a mall, I can oftentimes, if I'm looking for a new product, I can have full confidence that it's new. And I believe eBay is getting there with the guaranteed delivery. But the shopping experience that I may get elsewhere online, I don't I have to work a little harder to get that experience on eBay.
Okay. What about you, Brad?
I can't say that I shop on eBay enough to be able to really offer a qualified answer to that question.
Do you sell on eBay?
No, I have never sold on eBay, actually.
Okay. Well, you should.
I understand. I should.
You should have done that before you got here.
Well, I would use InkFrog tools to do that, though.
Okay, fair enough. I'll let you get a pass with that one.
All right, thank you.
How about you, Nicholas?
No, because of the cross-border and the distances, weight is super important.
Yeah.
So precision on weight for us, the further the package travels, the more important the weight is. And I know it's complicated because of the sellers and so on. But for every fact that we don't have precisely, it can increase the bill significantly for cross-border. To give you a sense, it can be two times more expensive. I mean, 50% of the whole order might be the product, and the other 50% shipping and customs. So being very precise on weight makes a huge difference.
And what % of your inventory are you seeing this sort of discrepancy in, if you will, like with weight? Like if it says 25 pounds and it ends up being 50, and then you have to eat the cost of. I'm just curious. I mean, or if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer.
Like 60%? 30%.
Juan is like, okay, I'll take a number, 30. This crowd doesn't know. 30, okay. Well, that's huge, right? Because then you have to eat the cost of, if it's heavier, chances are,
Right.
If it's lighter, you don't complain, but if it's heavier, then you have to eat the cost, yeah. How about you, Brett? Shopper on eBay?
I am. I buy a lot of golf clubs. A lot of them. My wife's not happy.
They seldom are with that purchase.
Yeah, 3 people and I couldn't even come up with something. So.
But you actually shop a lot on eBay?
I do, yeah,
And
absolutely.
Are there things that you don't
Well,
use to buy APIs?
touching on, sorry, what Kyle talked about was the product grouping and making sure that you're looking for a product, and sometimes it's hard to kind of filter through. There are some good results that come back and stuff, and trying to make sure that if I want to buy a Scotty Cameron, blah blah blah, it's going to be a Scotty Cameron, blah blah blah.
Well, I think Gail is coming up, but before I really want to thank our guests here. I mean, they've been just awesome. The ones that I have had personally a chance to work with, integrating with us. Thank you. Thank you.
Adopters, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you.